Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to be looking at going beyond best practices or beyond the basics, advanced features in QuickBooks Online Plus. And today's focus is going to be on the workflow for service-based businesses. Okay, service-based businesses. The key settings for pass-through, time, expense, material, because that's supported in Plus. Two-sided items. You have to have QBO Plus in order for double-sided items, as you might call them, to happen, right? I'd like to show a quick example of a pass-through, time, expense, material to an invoice, some of the automation settings, and then we'll look at a sub-customer versus a project, because there is project tracking now within QBO Plus. It's a setting you turn on, and when you would use one over the other, you might just use customer, but I'm kind of taking the quote-unquote add job theory from desktop and applying it in QBO Plus. Obviously, I'm going to start with an estimate. We're going to look at a budget to actual workaround and creating a budget by a particular customer to get an estimate to actual report, because there's no estimate to actual reporting in QBO, right? In any service-based businesses, you got to have Plus, at least for the two-sided item, right, and tagging a customer, right? I'm not really going to go into class tracking for job costing. I prefer using customer, sub-customer, or project for that, but you might use class tracking. Again, you need Plus for that. So most of your clients can be on Plus anyway. So progress invoicing is now in QBO. So we'll look at also customizing the sales form so that your client's customer will see the progress too. Related reporting, job costing at the bank feed level, and then a delayed charge to an invoice, because you might not need all of the above. You might just want to hold the charge to invoice later. That's also supported within QBO Plus. And if we have time, I'll go into the phone app. I'm actually not going to go into the QBO app itself. I'm going to go in like as a time tracking only user that would be on the phone and want to clock in and out and tag it to a job. That's supported as well. Okay, and that's probably what we'll get to today. So again, a lot of other links for upcoming webinars, training resources for yourself. A lot of the stuff I'm showing today is a video on our site at QBOBestPractices.com. I'll put that in the chat area too, and then we'll dive into product. I got to get going here. QBOBestPractices.com. So check that out. You can also register for stuff. I put both my email and our product video website in the chat area, but just, download the deck. There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, cool. So I am in Cloud Collaboration LLC. This is typically the file I use. I'm in from QBOA because everybody here is pretty much a team member of QBOA or part of an accounting firm, right? Although feel free to share our video on this with your clients, but there's a shorter one, like an abbreviated version on our site. So probably want to share that for anybody that wants pass-through time expense or the job costing. So we're going to start with settings. Gear icon, accountant settings, right? Under the gear icon, that's kind of your operational stuff. You probably already know that, right? So manage users, preferences. This to me is like edit preferences where I'm going now, right? So go to accountant settings and we'll start with sales. So we did product service yesterday with SOS. Here it is, progress invoicing, right? This is where you go ahead and turn it on. Now progress invoicing is supported in Simple Start, Essentials, and Plus. However, my contention is for service-based clients of yours, they need Plus. Why? Two-sided items basically, and the ability to pass through. Okay, and tag a customer to an expense. And I'll show you that setting as well. But progress invoicing is in Simple Start even because why? Well, estimates are there. So I'm invoicing, creating at least, more than one invoice against an estimate. So I'm going to show you that. It's very similar to how it works with Pro for that. But I think, regarding Pro, QBO Plus is close. I think where estimate to actual reporting is missing. That's a gap. Tracking payroll labor burden, like job costing payroll is also a gap in QBO. That's not there. So those are really the two main things regarding, job costing in general that still aren't in QBO. However, if you have a client that wants to be mobile, because I probably won't mention this again, and they don't want to be put on Premier Contractor or Enterprise or even Pro, because Pro has some of those things. There are two third parties I would consider for them if they really want QBO. Great, Notify for residential, CoreCon for commercial. And that's if they want to be mobile and use the phone, and there's all of that, and they don't want to install desktop. So because of those two feature sets that I think are critical for contractors, one being tracking labor burden, which you can't do in QBO, the other estimate to actual reporting, or even like a progress invoice report that's hopefully one day we'll have, but not yet. That's what these other apps would do, right? So very good. But anyways, progress invoicing, we'll look at that. And then really the main settings are in the expenses setting. And it's right here. Show items table on expense and purchase forms. Track expenses and items by customer. Make them billable. Billable will do what? That'll make QBO think you want to pass it through to an invoice, right? You don't need to have that. Maybe you just want a P&L buy, right? We have QBO Plus does have a profit and loss by customer. Not that you can't just go and run a P&L and, filter by a customer anyway. But we'll look at that. We'll look at profitability reporting because that's already built in. But these three settings are really my sleeper favorites for why you would want Plus, right? I mean, class tracking, sure, purchase orders, more than 3 users. I mean, that stuff's obvious, and you'll know. But I mean this stuff, like two-sided items. I didn't even know Essentials didn't do that, right? They only have single-sided items. So I check all of these off, right? Now, before I show another setting, I want to show, so what does this one mean, the items table, right? I'm in desktop, all right? I'm in desktop right now. I'm going to banking write checks because it's just very visible. This is what that setting does. I have an expenses tab. I have an items tab, right? So that when I tag an item, when I'm purchasing something like some kind of appliance that I'm bringing out to a job, and I have like 2 of them, right? Customer job. That setting, the next checkbox, allows me to tag, Christine, and I can make it billable or not. I'm just trying to relate it to something you're probably familiar with, which is in Pro even, or in your QuickBooks Accountant Edition. I'm on a cost form, incurring some expense, check, bill, credit card charge, right? These settings in QBO are going to just match what Pro already does, So that's what this is going to do, and you need Plus for that, all right? You decide in the markup. That's a little bit different from desktop because desktop you can choose the markup when you're about to add time cost to the invoice. It's further upstream in QBO Plus where I can set a default markup, right? And then the other thing missing in QBO that desktop has is a markup column and estimate. So some lack of visibility too with the reporting, but I think I already covered that, right? So we just kind of know that going in. If that's super critical, go with Notify, go with CoreCom. All right, and then the advanced, I just want to spend a little time here. Not that this is really going to, well, it might. Time tracking, right? Add service field to timesheets, right? Two-sided items, put it on timesheet. Now, timesheet, like a purchase order, just like in desktop, those are non-posting transactions, right? But I can send time to an invoice, right? And you can make it billable, okay? And then the automation, I just want to go over this, though. It might impact your clients. Pre-filled forms with previously entered content, I don't turn that on because it's not just for vendors. If it was just for vendors and it was more, equal to general preference in desktop, then I might turn it on, but it's not. So I usually leave it off because this would impact customers and employees too. Automatically apply credits and bill payments, I turn those off too because that will go to the next invoice or next vendor bill in line. And then the automatically invoice unbilled activity. Now this might work for a couple of your clients because it's a global setting. QBO for any type of cost that is tagged to a customer, project, or sub-customer that you want to pass through. You're not going to have it on for most of your clients, right? Because you want to choose, well, what time, what charges, what cost goes to the invoice. If you don't need that control, then turn it on. But I usually leave it off till the client of mine, till they prove me otherwise, right? But you might have a few clients where this works really well for. Now, there is a way to get this automatically invoice unbilled activity at the actual, like a per customer level. And that's a recurring transaction, because I'm not going to come back here. So let's go to recurring transactions under the gear icon, under the lists, and we'll look at this invoice here. I have the ability to control that better, include unbilled charges. So any unbilled activity I can include on this recurring invoice, and it's just going to Bayshore Chamber of Commerce. So it's not a global setting. So I can control it a little better per customer using the recurring transactions like you would with memorized transactions. But although desktop doesn't have this, automatically create transactions from unbilled activity. Right? That's a QBO thing. But the global one's in the settings. I just want to make sure that you saw that, what I usually keep off until my client proves me otherwise, as I said. Okay? So we have those settings. Now, real quick, pass-through time and expense. What this means, and let's just go to a check because we were writing a check in desktop, so it makes it relatable. Let's just say we were paying, Adams Clay for some work. Again, item details, account details, see? Essentials and Simple Start is just going to have, the tab there, this opens up item details and gives me the ability to make it billable, customer project, right, tag that. So I'm going to do accounting consulting, let's say it was 2 hours, and we're going to tag it to a particular, this particular customer, AEG product specialist. Making it billable does what? Allows me to pass it through, right? So let's go ahead and click Save and Close. So that's what those settings do, and that's why you want plus, just for that alone. Now, when I go to an invoice, just so we see it, of course, I could get there from the sales window, and I'd see unbilled activity, which I create invoices from. There's always a couple through ways to do things in QBO like desktop. But here, I'm just going to choose the AAG product specialist. I'm just showing the light job costing where you can pass through time and expense. Notice over on the right, I have the ability to add charges, time, or expense, or any estimates, right? This drawer is going to open up so I can bring it onto the invoice, okay? And in this case, we're just looking at, like, expenses, right? I have this billable expense from accounting consulting, right, that we just did. Now it's going to be over here. Notice I'm on a 300% markup. Your customer won't see this. That's the other benefit too, is markups can be on the screen only, but not for, the customer's eyes. So you can do that as well. And it's posting transactions. So pass-through time and expense. That's pass-through expense, but I could have tagged an appliance and sent it through. I could have tagged time and send it through too. I think we'll save the time to the end when I log into the Chrome on the app. So that's pass-through time and expense. There's also a report for unbilled activity. And then you have the global preference ready. Remember, if it were me and I don't really care, I might just set it globally so that I never have to create the invoice, like QBO do it. Or I might just have 5 customers set up, with a recurring transaction to pick up unbilled activity. Anyway, that's supported. From a service-based workflow, you're going to want to know about that stuff. Okay? Now, the other component outside of settings is items. We'll go to the products and services list. I like going into the gear icon because I'm a creature of habit like everybody else, or I could go over to sales, and products and services is just one of the sub-tabs within the sales window, right? Remember, in all sales or even customers, you're going to have this money bar up top, which shows open invoices, which we're going to look at next, the estimate, right? The budget to actual, we're going to that next. But I have unbilled activity, right? Bunch of unbilled activity. Charges, these are delayed charges. We're going to go over the delayed charge form at the very end because it might be something only your client needs, right? It's a non-posting transaction, and you can invoice against them. Kind of like a sales order, but not really. But, you use the estimate for the estimate, so most contracts are going to start with that, and contractors are going to use that. But delayed charge is great for, like, landscaping clients, pool cleaners, anybody that's going to invoice their client, like, monthly. However, when you talk about that, what I would do if I was cleaning pools or mowing lawns is I would set up a recurring sales receipt for all my clients and use QuickBooks Payments, and that's free ACH. So it takes 5 days to fund, but then there's no AR for me. I might do that instead. And those slides, by the way, for the recurring sales receipt and auto debiting the customer's account for free ACH, those slides or pictures of that happening is in the deck, right? So that's something to consider, particularly, and some of you guys are already doing that with your clients in the Your Books file of QBOA. You're setting up a recurring sales receipt for every single client you charge, you roll in the QBO fee, and you just put in the bank and routing, and we remember it every time, right? So there's no accounts receivable even necessary there. It's just a recurring payment I'm being received from my customer or client. So you can do that too. So contractors might want to do that. But anyways, mostly it's invoicing because you're invoicing against the estimate. Anyway, I digress. But I have charges here, time, expense. You can create an invoice from them, right? That's essentially what I'm doing here. Actually, let me make that a little bigger. Create invoice. There we go. Okay. So we have that. Now, question. Can you do everything now related to project accounting and QBO Plus that you could do in Pro? Kevin, the things you're missing that I mentioned already would be you can't track payroll labor burden. Right? So on a paycheck in QBO, I cannot tag a customer or a sub-customer or a project. And also, there's no estimate to actual report. And basically, if you go into desktop, this is what I'm talking about. So like on a paycheck, right, you can tag a customer job. But under reports, and you have jobs, time, and mileage, this estimate to actual detail or the progress invoice, these reports are not in QBO yet. Right? I can do a profit and loss by job, which I'm going to show you. And then there's budget, but I use a budget to actual workaround, which I'm about to go into. However, it's not for all of your clients. I mean, it has to be for clients that are super rigid within QBO because it's really easy to forget and do something wrong And, so it's not, the reporting is going to be very accurate. So for those clients, and also if you have tons of jobs during the week, I'm going with a third party because I'm not going to spend the time to set up the budget to actual workaround in QBO. I'm just going to pay the money for the third party app and have that visibility right away. But those are the two main ones. Change orders, I can create an item for that. But a budget to actual is already in QBO. That's what I'm about to show you. But the estimate to actual, the default report that's created from the estimate right away, that's not yet in QBO. So again, if I have a lot of jobs every week, I don't want to keep creating budgets as a workaround, because I'm not going to have the time. So I'll go and plug in with Notify and have that visibility as soon as I create an estimate. All right, but desktop has the estimate to actual reporting. QBO Plus, the workaround is to create a budget by a customer. Right? Okay. Projects. There was another setting. Forgot. Accountant settings. And I believe it's it's an advanced setting. Projects. Turn that on. Right? It just gives you a project center. I still like sub-customer though, because again, that's what I'm used to. But we do have projects right here in the left-hand panel. When you turn that on, you'll have it. Now, projects is a plus thing. And I created a project. I have a few in-progress projects, right? It basically gives me a project center. Okay? We'll get back to two-sided items. But beyond the basics, BTB 062718. This is my project for today. I create these always before these presentations, so I have something fresh. But it gives me a project center, right? The client is called Beyond the Basics, and this is their job. Think of this as the address or whatever. This is essentially, customer : subcustomer, or customer : job, or customer : project. But it shows all the transactions I already have, which are the estimate, right? And I did start with the estimate because that's my contract with them. It's just $700. It's just a simple example, very fundamental. I'm doing 2 hours of each. These are bookkeeping services as a category. The items, remember, estimate, invoice, sales receipt, these are all item-based transactions. That's why two-sided items are really important. Okay? Why you want plus. So I have accounting consulting for 2 hours, bookkeeping, telephone support, right? That's what I'm doing. They've agreed on this. Desktop has a markup column, which is great because you can literally see the estimate versus actual at the estimate level itself. In QuickBooks Online, I can just see what I'm expecting to get paid from the client, not yet the cost to me, right? So let's keep this estimate open because we are going to invoice progressively against it in a bit. I'm going to right-click, duplicate the tab I'm on, just to have another window. I'm assuming you probably already know about this trick. Yeah, we are, just to Kevin's point, we are investing a lot in product-based businesses. We've done a lot with that. So come to that webinar or watch the video. And we also are investing in service-based. So you will see more from a project or job costing standpoint. I just don't have an ETA when some of these missing features will be in there. Leaving with estimate, this is my estimate for the job, right? And we will progress invoice for it again. Now, they're item-based. Gear icon, products and services. Let's get back there. I think that's where I started. I got sidetracked. By me. Now, I'm going to filter by bookkeeping categories. Right? And so you notice two-sided items. It's pretty easy. Let's go into accounting consulting. All I'm really doing is I have sales info, $200 an hour, services income account, right? Don't worry about price rules, but you have those too. And in plus. And then purchasing info. I'm just checking the box. I purchased a product and service from a vendor. So this item I can use on a check or a bill to pay a subcontractor, right? And then also use it on an invoice or an estimate or sales receipt. Remember, estimates are non-posting, but you know what I mean. It just turns on the other side. You probably notice double-sided item in desktop. If I go back to desktop, it's similar to this checkbox. I go to my item list. It's the same item. Edit it. It's this checkbox. This service is used in assemblies or performed by a subsea, right? Just turns on the cost side, right? But instead of left to right in QBO, I can still have two-sided items, but it's sales will be up top, and then you scroll down to fill in the purchasing side, okay? So that's really what I'm trying to do, something similar. Okay, so I have those items already set up, and I have them on the estimate. Then what I did is after the estimate, and let's go to the, oh, and by the way, what are you using for service items is a question I see. Either a non-inventory part, but I usually use a service item. Right, and you're just creating new, and then you're checking off purchasing down below, right? So that's all I'm really trying to do, right? So you have these types right? You're probably not doing a lot of inventory with job costing because you debit COGS when you sell it. So most contractors are going to have non-inventory parts, as you know. They use bundle items a lot, though, so the customer doesn't see all the phases of the job. It's just the description and the amount. So bundle items are great to put on an estimate and invoice. And then, bundle item would just be composed of either non-inventory service items. Right? So this bundle is a group item, not a build assembly, a group item. Okay? Okay, and I promise, next time the phone dies, go ahead and let me know right away. I'm watching for that now. Almost paranoid at this point. And then I'll dial in with my cell, and then we'll just do the best we can. Appreciate your patience. Okay, so budget. Here's the workaround. Since there's no estimate to actual reporting within QBO Plus, but I've already set up the estimate, right? So I take the estimate, I open up the products and service list because I can add the expense account to it, right? Because I have to use that to figure out, okay, well, if it's 2 hours for each, the cost, so it's $200 in cost to me, and I'm anticipating $700 in revenue. So I'm budgeting that. It's going to cost me $200 this particular job, and the revenue I'm budgeting is $700. Super simple example, all right? You go to the budget under the gear icon, and I created a budget already, right? It's just you add a budget, you can subdivide. Like if you click Add Budget, you can subdivide. So I usually do a yearly budget, right, for the total amounts. I name it, and I subdivide by customer and choose the particular, either sub-customer or customer. Remember, customer name colon, my sub-customer. Or, in my case, it was customer name colon project. Now, what's the difference and when would you use them? Okay, well, I'm glad you asked. So, and here, by the way, here's my budget report for the job. So what I'm anticipating. And then I also have a budget versus actual, which we're going to look at a little later on. Right, but that's the workaround. Is budget versus actual is going to be just like your estimate to actual. Now let's align first on when are we using project versus sub-customer. I'm going to duplicate another tab to leave those open. So again, where the desktop wins with this, if your client doesn't have internet access, you're probably going to keep them on Pro anyway, is when they create the estimate, it automatically pre-fills the estimate to actual report. Now, there's no actual data yet because I haven't done any data entry against the job. But still, I have the template already. But with QBO Plus, the extra step or steps is to create the budget for that job, right? Now, it takes me about, 5 minutes to do it, 10 minutes. But if I have 20 jobs that week, that's what I mean. I mean, how much time do you want to spend doing a workaround versus just seeing it in a third-party app right away? That's my point for the third-party apps, all right? And you'll know that. You'll know your client. You can show them this, and there's even a video on it, but they may be like, no, I'll go with Notify, thanks, right? But some that don't have a lot of jobs a week, well, this might work perfectly well. So I am going to, let's see, I have the budget overview, the estimate, budget versus actual. We're going to get to, sales customers. When to use a sub-customer versus a project? Because project is fairly new. So here I have sub-customer 1601 of this particular customer. Or you can call it an address, whatever. A lot of times you just have a customer, and then you'll have the jobs will be addresses, right, that you're doing the work for the customer. Why I use a sub-customer is when I need more info at the sub-customer level, like a separate billing address or a separate ship-to address. All that's helpful. Or I might want different names or something, or a different email or something. And of course, in 99% of the cases, always when it's a sub-customer, you just check the box, you're going to bill with the parent, right? Because the main entity is probably paying for the job or the work. I want to see all the invoices on the customer payment window, not just for this particular sub-customer. You have an option to bill just this customer, which is a sub-customer alone, but I usually leave bill with parent on all when I'm doing this. Now, when would I use a project? Because remember, sub-customer and project, they're almost identical when you're filtering a report, putting it on a transaction, et cetera. You're going to see that in a sec. But projects you turn on, and it's both a tab at the customer record level where you can add a first project, or and track your projects. Like for my example, when I go to Beyond the Basics, I don't see any subs, but they're all projects. So I can drill into the project from there. So it's still, to me, similar because you have a parent name colon child name, okay? That's how it should look on transactions when you're filtering by a report, etc. Whether you use project, sub-customer, I don't have a dog in the fight. I still prefer, well, that's not true. I still prefer sub-customer because that's what I'm used to, but that doesn't mean you have to do that. It's really up to you guys. And some clients find it have a benefit of visually seeing a project center that they can then drill into the project that I created, because really the project, all it is, it's just a name and then some notes, right? So sub-customer has way more fields to track things to and report on. So I like sub-customer. And again, last time I'll mention it, I'm just used to it. But project, if they don't need all that detail and they want the project center so all the transactions are there and there's we link to a report right away, project profitability, unbilled time and expense. All these are reports that I can already create in QBO by default, but we just can them and put them into a project center. That's really the main difference to me, right? But we're probably building a lot in here. That's my guess, is this is like the first foray into true job costing. We'll probably use this center more and more, right? So I'm naming the project, and obviously beyond the basics is a customer, right? And that's where I went in to do this yesterday when I was prepping for today. I have no profitability yet. This is just a P&L buy, filter for that particular project. And that's all I got, really. And transactions, these are the ones I already created. The estimate, and I did some billable charges already. Haven't invoiced it yet. I was going to wait for us, right? Now, let's do some transaction entry. And we'll leave that report there. I'll do one other tab and just show how the names show up on the forms, okay? Then we'll do some progress invoicing, look at more reporting, sales form customization, and then job costing of the bank feed, delayed charge, time tracking from the phone app versus like the regular QuickBooks app on the phone. You guys might not even know. All right, so a couple questions. Mia, when you invoice the parent customer, all the invoices projects show? Yes, they do by default. Good question. If I'm using sub-customer, remember I got to go with that default bill with parent for that to happen. That's in the customer payment window when Mia receives a payment from main entity for jobs 1, 2, 3. All invoices for jobs 1, 2, 3 will show. That's what she's asking. So yes. If I had an agency who ran radio ads, mag ads, and TV ads, would projects be a good method to review those modes over different customers? Yes, for sure, or even classes. I think, Juliana, for that, though, it's a list element. I can still get a P&L by class, but I think when you're selling stuff and you want to tag something to an ad agency just to look at a profit and loss across magazine, TV, and radio ads, I would probably use either location or class, depending, and save customer job or projects for something else. However, you could use it if you wanted to. I just think class is easier because all you're doing is creating your list element here of classes, going to all lists, creating classes, and then you're assigning it on the transaction level for class. So I still think that's how you do it in desktop, so I would do that in QBO. For me, I wouldn't do projects for that. Doesn't mean you can't. But I like class tracking for that one. How do I access this recording in the future? Yeah, I will put in the YouTube link at the end. I'll keep that in there. I have production companies and they need cost reports, a budget to actual on a project. I can use this right. Yes. Yes. But again, we're not really tracking WIP, Wendy. We're not tracking construction in process, really. If they really need that visibility and quickly to make quick decisions, then I would do like a third party. But yes, if it was pretty light as far as data entry and, just a very fundamental simplicity, yeah, you could use projects for that, for sure. Or class or sub-customer, really, they all can be used. Money spent coded versus their film budget. Yes, then I would just use a budget and then the actual to that, totally. That would be great. Sure, that's pretty easy. I mean, it's kind of my example. I'm just not doing a film project. It's just some accounting project that I'm doing for a client. So that's good. All right. Let's see here. Sorry, I keep two-sided items. Right. We've already been over that. Progress, budget to actual. Got it. Right. So now we're going to enter some transactions. Now, the other thing using projects is you can just add to project here. Right. So I can add an expense. Let's say we did a third-party 1099 contractor that does some of the bookkeeping work, right? And I think it's Bayek Accounting. Yeah, there they are. Now, again, I'm using items. Now, the drawer, there's a lot of stuff in the drawer that hopefully doesn't confuse you, but you've probably seen this in your client files. When you're entering an expense or a check, if there's open bills, QBO is going to remind you because we don't want to duplicate the expense, right? So the drawer is good. You also saw it when I went to create that invoice against unbilled time, or I think it was unbilled expense. The drawer is good. It reminds you, right? And I think it's good to have, but I'm going to close it because I don't want to confuse anybody. Let's pretend Bake Accounting had no open bills. So, but I am using the items tab, or I could use accounts, but I'm still going to do accounting consulting. Let's say they did one of it so far. It flags it as billable into this customer project, right? It defaults there. I didn't have to choose it. That's the other thing I like about projects is it auto-populates the name in the appropriate field to then invoice against, right? And I got to make it billable in order for it to show up in the project center. But, you know, in this case, my client already accepted the estimate, right? So I'm not going to pass it through again. So my argument is in the design of the project functionality, you wouldn't need to make it billable, right? But I'm going to keep it billable just because of pass-through time expense and stuff. But there's two theories here with job costing, I think, and you probably agree. You're either passing it through to an invoice, you know, unbilled activity you assign to a job, or in my case, job meaning customer, sub-customer, project, or you're looking at profitability of, or both, right? So it doesn't always have to be billable. I'm going to make it billable, but it doesn't have to be. Because if I just want a P&L by, in Wendy's example, P&L by film project, then I'm not going to make it billable unless there's like some extra expense or time I forgot to include in the original estimate. So I just want to make sure it gets passed through, right? So nothing falls through the cracks, then billable's key. Just to use her example, which is way better one than mine. So I'm going to adopt it. All right, bookkeeping services an hour, telephone support also an hour. Right, $100 of the 200 so far. This is posting, right? This is good. So I'm going to click Save and Close. Now, let's look at some reporting. Already in the Transaction Center, I have my billable charges and estimate and stuff. Haven't invoiced yet. But again, your client might like the fact that they can see everything in here and the status and stuff. And I guess you can add some columns. Oh, there's a sales rep. Now, I know there's no particular sales rep tracking within QBO per se. We use custom field number 2. I mean, there's no report. You can use a custom field. We'll go over that when we customize an invoice. We'll get there in a second. All right, other thing I wanted to show. Let's go back to this report, budget overview so far. We'll refresh it. Remember, when you use tab browsing, it doesn't always refresh. Budget overview so far, right, that's what I'm seeing. Now let's go to budget to actual. So here's my quote-unquote estimate to actual report. I should already see some. I go here. I can't get rid of the first column, unfortunately, or set of columns. It's the main customer. Like this, I'll never be able to get rid of. But I'm filtering. You want to go down to filter. Let's close this stuff. Oh, we'll look at just today. Now we'll just leave it. That's fine. This year's fine. Customer. And I'm going to scroll down to Beyond the Basics. The 6/27/18, that's today. Click Run Report. Okay. So already I have some actual in there because I did some stuff yesterday. So don't worry about the first column. I can't hide that either, right? You might have to send that to Excel for that. I'm mostly concerned about this. This is my job. This is my project, I should say, or sub-customer would show up the same way. I've filtered it just for this to get an estimate, quote-unquote estimate to actual report. Right? So I have the actual so far. There's no revenue yet. I know. We're about to invoice. The budgeted and the over budget and percent of budget, right? And then I have the total for any, right? But this is just really filtered for the one. But if I looked at all Beyond the Basics, it would show for all 4. I think I had 4 projects for that, right? As you're creating transaction entry and tagging it to cost forms, meaning posting transactions, a bill, a check, an expense. Can't do payroll yet, though, right? But that's what the third party would be for, because they can track that, or some people do a $0 journal entry. Let's go to the estimate. We're going to progress invoice for half. So now you can do this in QBO. Again, simple start assumptions and plus, but we're only using plus because two-sided items and the other stuff we already mentioned. I can do all the lines, so very similar to how this behaves in desktop, right? When you're progressively invoicing against an estimate. Total of all estimate lines, 700, or I'm going to do 50%, right, 350, or I can do a custom amount for each line. However, not for quantity, just for amount or percent, not yet quantity. But at most, you're not doing it for quantity anyways. I'd say in most cases, it's amount or percent, soon to be quantity, because we auto-figure the quantity for you. Watch. It's going to create the invoice for 50%. There's no reporting on this yet. It's really at the transaction level. There's the drawer for billable time charges and things like that. I'm going to close it, but remember, it's good to have. You're going to have clients that don't even need this workaround. They just want to pass stuff through, right? And that's fine too. And you know those settings, you know how to do it now. But in my case, I'm not adding it to this invoice. What's due? 50% of 400, 50% of 200, 50% of 100. It auto defaults the quantity. I cannot override that, right? So it's percent or amount for the progress invoicing, okay? And then down below, once I save it, this is posting. Now we're going to see some revenue. Down below, I have the total estimate, the original amount, this invoice, and the total invoice so far. So I know I have $350 left. If I go back to the estimate, I also have that visibility at the transaction level. We're still talking progress invoicing here. Down below, estimate total, invoice so far, remaining subtotal, $350. Right? Now, if we go to that invoice, link transaction, remember anything blue you can go to, very helpful. What does my client see? What does the customer see? And how do I get that to happen? Because I'm going to send them this invoice, right? So before you print preview, I want to customize it, and we just want to edit the current just to show you that what's necessary to make sure my customer, the one I'm doing this work for, is going to see the progress so far against the estimate. Don't worry, we have a short video on this, so you don't have to remember it. I'm just showing you. In the edit print settings, I have to make sure this fit printed form with pay stub is unchecked. That's something no one's going to remember, but I go over it in the video. Just what are the ducks in the row to make sure my customer, beyond the basics, is going to see the progress when I send them their first invoice. You know, content. You're going to first click the pencil icon up top. Sales rep. Again. You can custom fields. There's 3 custom fields that I can have on a sales form, meaning an estimate, an invoice, or a sales receipt. Right now, I'm just concerned with the invoice. Sales rep we just use for number 2. Actually, you know, when you convert from desktop, because we do our share of conversions too, sales rep defaults into custom field number 2. So I could filter a sales by customer report, detail report, by a sales rep and add a column. It's kind of like a sales rep report. Right? It's not going to tell me the commission amount, but neither would desktop. Still got to figure that out. At least desktop has the canned reporting, but I could do that in QBO. So there's that too, where the sales rep would show up. Okay, if you have that. All right, the target area of the invoice, product, service, category, description. What do you want to include? If I scroll down, there's show more activity options, and then you have show progress on line items, email only. Okay, so this is me emailing the invoice, and when I have that box checked up, I'm going to click done, checked off, excuse me. When I print preview, I should see a due column. This is for the invoice going to my customer that's accepted the work I'm going to do for them. And I've already invoiced 50% of the job. So what are they going to see, right? So, and down below they see the estimate summary. So total invoice so far, that means to me I have $350. So the visibility on progress invoicing, and then we'll stop with progress invoicing and move on, is at the transaction level, meaning the estimate in the invoice, not in the sales center, not in the customer record, and it's just not there's not a report yet. We're working on that. It's really version 1 of this progress invoicing. Okay? The report's still going to show the open invoice as being $700. So it's at this level. So, and that's good to know because, you know, if your client really needs reporting on progress invoicing, then maybe they don't use progress invoicing yet till it's fully baked, right? Okay. Yes, Kevin, good question. Does progress invoicing only work off an estimate? Or can you use it off an invoice? Right. No, it works off an estimate. And that there's two things that come to my mind when you ask that question. Thanks for asking it. One is a delayed charge. I might as well look at that now because maybe your client doesn't need an estimate per se. They're not going to be doing estimate or the budget tax or workaround and whatever. Delayed charge is fine. Back to if I'm mowing lawns, then I can do a delayed charge form, under the spinny plus sign, right? The plus sign, I have a delayed charge. This is a non-posting transaction. Since it's non-posting and I can invoice against it, right? If I go to Beyond the Basics for today and choose this project, all right, and I'm doing, I don't know, more bookkeeping for 2 hours or something, they might not need it to do that whole thing. I'm just holding this charge. It's non-posting, but I can invoice against it. It's just going to show up in the drawer as charges. but it's nothing I can progressively invoice against. To go back to Kevin's question, it has to be an estimate that I'm starting from to do the progress invoicing. At this time, I would love it to be against a delayed charge because in my lawn mowing scenario, I'm not going to be creating estimates for this. I'm just going to do a bunch of delayed charges. I'm actually, no, sorry, I'm doing my recurring sales receipts. But some of my clients, they want an invoice, they want to pay net 30. Okay, fine, I'm not going to turn away the gig. They still pay me. They haven't, they haven't like missed a payment yet. So okay, let me do a net 30 or net 15. In that case, then I would just do like probably delayed charges, or recurring invoices. Remember the recurring transactions you can do. It's very important. You can do it for sales receipts as well as invoices. I might not even use the non-posting order. I might just have this set to go every month for this lawn gig I'm doing that's automatically sent, and it'll include any other inbound activity like they called me out to, do some hedge trimming, or plant a tree, right? So I just tag that throughout QBO, and it doesn't forget. It's going to include the charge, right? So remember recurring transactions. I think they're even more critical for service-based clients than product-based, But the sales receipt itself, this is the one where I don't have payments turned on. I wish I did, but you have this option to lock in ACH, and then put in like the banking routing info, automatically send. So like that for getting rid of AR, if you don't really need it to be an invoice, it shouldn't be. It should be a sales receipt. Okay, but we're talking, for the most part, estimate to invoice. All right, long answer to that, sorry. But I want to make sure we're all aligned on what we're doing here. Okay, if I go back to the overview again, project profitability, I click on that, and this is going to be, so far I'm looking at, cash basis. Here we go. Net operating income of this particular project, today's, is $150. Just for the data entry we've already done. We've had some cost of goods sold, we had some service revenue. I mean, granted, I'm using a super simple example just so we can align here, right? I've budgeted basically two accounts, an income account and a COGS account. Right? That's what my items are hitting. Right? When you're setting up those items, that's important too. Now, you could use just accounts for this. However, remember, you wouldn't be using an estimate then, or even an invoice, because those are item-based. So you really need to use items, okay? Upfront deposits, we haven't really talked about. You could create an item for that, an upfront deposit item that you put on a sales receipt to take money up front, like 50% or 25% up front, and then make sure that you include that on the final invoice as a -1. There's a video on that on our website, but there's a couple things. You could either do a deposit, some people do, or use a sales receipt for the upfront deposit, or the retainer, if you will. I think I created, let's see, I think I have some upfront deposit item, yeah. So, and it's hitting another current liability. I mean, it's up to you. Some people will do like a negative AR if it's within the same accounting period and like apply that, in the customer payment window. But I think the workaround in desktop, and you can just apply it here, is to do an upfront deposit. It's a single-sided item going to a retainer account. You put that on a sales receipt, which then would credit that, right? And then you then bleed it off with a -1 on an invoice, on the final invoice. So there's ways to do that. We have videos on upfront deposits. There's probably even a workaround for WIP. I don't think I've really put that into play yet, but I got to work on that one. So related reporting, again, from the project you can run the P&L by, okay? From the profit and loss in general, there's already a profit and loss by customer, but if I do accrual, and I just do today, run the report, I can filter, again, you're just filtering for the customer and then looking for, my whatever customer it is, or sub-customer or project, right? And you might not even need to use sub-customer or project. Your client, it might be okay just to use a customer. Either way, you're turning on those settings for pass-through time and expense, as well as for profitability, to tag the customer, sub-customer, project to the cost, and then obviously the revenue, because it's going to be an invoice against that estimate or whatever, so I can see profitability-wise. Right? But I created this report. I didn't need the project center for that. But for some of your clients, it might be really nice for projects. And I'm hoping we add more and more stuff in there. So I'm sewing projects, even though I still use sub-customer myself, okay, in real life. All right, job costing at the bank feed level. When does that happen? And then we'll look at time tracking entry, and we'll look at any other open questions, and then we'll call it for today. I will note to self, YouTube video on the for the recording of this. We've already been doing this for a while. So at the expense level, like I went out and bought some supplies to take for the job. When I drill in on the bank feed, right, there is an ability to choose the customer or sub-customer or project, and I can make it billable, right? This is essentially me creating a transaction. It's just from the feed, and when I add it, it's going to tag that cost to that. So there's that. However, you all are probably used to doing bank rules. The rule level, while it supports the default class, it's not really for job costing. Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's like if I bought something at Amazon, for office supplies and send it out, down here, I can tag a default class. You're creating rules so that QBO automatically, based on the criteria up here, it'll do this. But there's no customer or billable here. You have to do it within the transaction feed itself. But that's important because we are so promoters from an Intuit standpoint of bank feeds within QBO. Like this to me is so critical to get the data in and help automate it. But the only way to job cost it at this point is at the transaction feed level itself. You won't see customer or billable, these two fields here in the rule. I hope we add them there because, again, we're all about more about automation. But since they're connecting their credit card, they're probably using that at Lowe's to buy the whatever to take to the job, right? So that you can do the job costing at the bank feed level as well. So I just wanted to make sure we had that. You saw delayed charge, right? Remember delayed charge? I think, trying to think which customer I did it for, but it's just going to show up on an invoice in the drawer, right? And then you have the global setting or the recurring invoice if you want to control that more. Now, the other thing, I want to show something else because you're going to have these users in the client QBO file that are time tracking only, and Plus gives you that ability. These are for people in the field, and you just want them to tag time. See? Wood 1099C? He's just a time tracking only user. He has no other type of access to QBO. All he sees is entering his own time, right? Now, there's a phone app on my phone. Let me go ahead and show the phone. Connect. Hopefully you guys are seeing the phone. Yeah, maybe later. Let me sign in. So I'm going to sign in. It signed me out while we were doing the presentation. Let's see. Wood 1099C at Gmail. Now, this is going to be my time-only employee, and he doesn't have any access except for time entry and a time report for him into the QBO file, right? But I'm not in the QuickBooks app. I'm just using Google Chrome or Firefox on the phone. But look, he can do like a single time activity or a weekly timesheet. He can enter start times, or he can choose the customer, and I can just look for beyond the basics, right? Just keep the theme going here, right? There's my job. I have the item, right? Let's say it was, bookkeeping or whatever, telephone support probably. Make it billable or not, right? The date, the location and class. So I can do all that just logged into QBO natively through the browser on my phone. When I hit save and close, right, it's going to send it up duration. Sorry, let's do an hour. This presentation is an hour, right? So save and close. And now, Wood can even run his own report, profitability. Now, it's not optimized for the phone, right? But I can at least see, the time that I have. It's non-posting, but, it's just me. I don't have full access to QBO. I'm just a time entry user, but I can do it while I'm out in the field, tablet, phone. Now, the other thing that's important is the QuickBooks app in general. Now, this is more. I mean, I'd have to invite Woody at a different user level for this, but, they might be out here and creating an estimate on the fly. I can even get a signature on the estimate, do an invoice, a sales receipt, take a payment, right? Look at a report. I can look at my chart of accounts, my customers and projects, or my items, right? And this is me just downloading the QuickBooks app as just a user on the file, right? So not full functionality, but it's still quite a bit. Not to mention, I can do a quick expense. And if you guys need to leave, it's okay. I know we're at time. I just wanted to show you this one thing. because I could take like a picture of something that gas on the way to the job. We're going to get reimbursed by that client, right? So I'm going to take a photo of the receipt, and the only thing is it always has me fit the edges of the great snap pic. Got it, second. Hopefully that worked. Yeah, cool. So I can use the photo, right? And then who did I pay? And we'll just say it was, Walmart. I guess let's just say gas station, whatever. Location, what kind of expense is it? So it's going to be gas or whatever I had. Yeah, here we go, gas and oil. Who or what was it for? This is where I can go in and look for my Beyond the Basics, right? Because we drove out there, tag the project, and make it billable, right? And then I have to type in the amount, though. Like, it doesn't do it automatically. So I had, what, 1914? 1914. So I saved that. Unvalid expense type. Oh, right, sorry. We'll say it was credit, whatever. Or debit card or something. Account expenses. Oh, sorry, account. I thought I had already, let's say it's the Amex. Got it. So you got to fill all this out. Save it, but this is going to create a transaction within the file, because I'm in the file, and then that's billable. It's tagged to that, to that particular customer, right? If I go up here, here's the expense. By the way, you left click in the search field. It gives you the last 10 transactions entered or modified, Here's my expense. Just did it from the phone, or Woody did it when he's out there, right? If I upgraded his user role, here's my receipt. So, and it was tagged to the job. We just did that now. So there's that too, and that's totally free as long as I'm a user, right? On QBO, I mean, not a time tracking user, that's just time only, and you have to be in the web browser. But the phone app would be helpful for people in the field if you have them to, some type of user access, if you will. All right, on time tracking, can each job time be tracked too? Yeah, I mean, you can do it in the weekly timesheet. Again, this is non-posting, but I'm entering the time. T-sheets would work too, but like, the project name, right, Beyond the Basics. And we'll do this one, service item. We'll say, let's do telephone support. I don't think we've, and then put in the hours. We did, 1.5 or something, right? Make it billable or not, right? But again, this is non-posting. But yeah, I can do that, Cindy, for sure. Okay, the only other thing to mention, I think, I'm just going to clear it, cancel this for now. But yeah, I just want to make sure you knew about the mobile app for mobile employees, right? And then the time entry person, right? The other thing I want to mention is at the employee level, really contractors, there is a way when you add a contractor, because this would be 1099-C, where you can send an email to the contractor to input the 1099 info. So, and then we have direct pay now, where ACH pay of contractors. It's like, depends, either $1.50 or $2. Pay contractors with direct deposit. It does require a payroll subscription already, but it would allow me to pay my contractor with a direct deposit, which is another thing. And you have the ability to, they're still waiting for info. In other words, I can email this person to fill in this info for me. And it just gives them like a free self-employed, not the full self-employed, but just a free login just to enter their 1099 info. So you can email when you invite a new contractor. Let me show you just where it would be. But this might be helpful for service-based clients. If I add a contractor, I put in their name and email, and it emails the contractor to complete their profile. So pretty sweet. It does it from a self-employed, really, is what that happens. Really easy for them. They get an email, and they log into self-employed. These are some of the screenshots you get. They fill out all the info, their 1099 info, et cetera, and the number, Social Security, whatever their ID would be, and it comes into QBO that way. So, and it's free self-employed. They don't actually have to sign up for anything. But there's that, too. I wanted to mention that. And then if we go back to my report, I should have saved it. If we go a minute over, if you can, budget to actual, customize. I think I got some revenue in there now. And we'll just do like customize, filter, customer. I'll scroll down, Beyond the Basics, run report. So now I have some actual revenue, right? My over budget, under, percent of budget, dollar remaining even, percent remaining. If you want, you can add that too. I just can't collapse the left, that left beyond the basics column of all zeros, but I just scroll over. Here's what I got. Cool. All right, so we're at like one past. I will stop the recording.